And I wish to begin by thanking the honourable gentleman from Carmarthen West and South Pembrokeshire for bringing this debate forward. And this is a debate ultimately about the very nature of our democracy itself. When disagreement is expressed in a hateful, vile manner, it is intended to intimidate, and it's a threat to the very foundations on which democracy is built. There can be no doubt that the poison, the hatred and abuse faced by almost every single serving elected representative in this House must give anyone who may be considering entering public life pause for thought. The sad fact is, Mr Chair, I genuinely hesitated about participating in this debate today, since there is a view out there, and I don't suggest it's a universal view, but there is a view out there that serving elected representatives should not be debating this. We should just suck it up, because that's politics. For some, engaging in politics in an abusive and intimidatory way is the new normal. If you don't like it, go and do something else. Sadly, even the value of democracy has become open to question in some quarters. Now, we all understand, everybody in this chamber understands that the mere fact of participating today may well open up more abuse to be heaped upon us. And for that very reason, Mr Chair, my friend and colleague, the honourable member for Edinburgh South West, withdrew her name from this debate today. And she, Mr Chair, apart from, with the exception of Scotland's First Minister, is the most abused female politician, if not the most abused politician, in Scottish politics. There is no doubt that not all, but much abuse online is facilitated by the mere fact of anonymity, as we've heard. Online, people can pour out their abuse and intimidation to whomsoever they decide that they don't like. They can send abusive Facebook messages and retain their anonymity. And you can even hide your identity behind a Twitter handle. If your identity is not revealed, the theory goes, you can say whatever you like. You can move on from disagreeing with an elected representative's views in a vile and hateful manner and slip very easily into making threats which, again, are designed to intimidate. You can comment in any way you like. After all, elected representatives are fair game, are they not? However, if we don't agree with a political party or a politician, then democracy demands that we take them on through argument in a constructive and respectful manner. Now, I have absolutely no time for Nigel Farage, but like many others, I do not think for 1 second that what happened to him yesterday was in any way acceptable. If we cannot take our opponents on through the arguments respectfully, then we have already lost. And I'm deeply concerned about the examples of abuse that I've heard around the chamber today. But sadly, for too many, the poison, the abuse, the attempts to intimidate, it seems, are what passes for political discourse in some quarters. And where does all this poisonous abuse come from? Well, I'm sure it comes from a variety of sources, and we could probably have another debate entirely on that. But there is no doubt, Mr Chair, and nobody's mentioned it today, there is no doubt that it can be stirred up by some sections of the tabloid press, as I found out recently to my cost, when a stilled photo frame of me in the chamber, lasting about 1 second, was published in a way to suggest that I was actually asleep on the job. Now, I'm sure that when the journalist printed this story, it seemed like a jolly good wheeze. But the fact is, Mr Chair, as a direct result of that story, which was categorically untrue, and which, you know, if you'd watched the film for another 30 seconds, less than 30 seconds, you would have seen it was untrue. As a direct result of that story, I encountered the most horrific abuse, entirely predictable, of course, which was, of course, designed to intimidate, for seeming to do something which I had not done. Now, given the toxic nature of our politics, this was a shamefully bad and dangerous piece of so-called journalism, not worthy of the name. But over time, pieces like this diminish, denigrate and belittle all elected representatives and corrodes the very basis of democracy itself. No one should be abused and intimidated simply for doing their job. Yet we have a situation where it is almost, I would think it is very unusual to come across an MP who has not received a death threat. Some of my own colleagues have suffered the most appalling abuse, as have others across this House, as we've heard. You could say that this is because politics has become polarised, it has become toxic and all the rest of it. But the reality is that apart from that, despite all that, we who serve in public life have become fair game. Apparently, tolerating intimidation and abuse has become part of our job description. And it has been said that we in public life have a duty to uphold the standards that we wish to see, and that's absolutely correct. We must be careful with our own language. Disagreement, robust disagreement, is absolutely fine and is the lifeblood of political discourse. But when it becomes personal abuse, hate-filled rants, robust disagreement has become something else entirely. We know that studies have been carried out into abuse in public life, and we know that much has been written about it. We know the police take it very seriously, but the reality is it's not just respect for elected representatives that has declined, it is respect for the democratic process itself. Now somehow, and I don't pretend, Mr Chair, to have the answers, but somehow we need to help the public rediscover and rebuild their respect for the political process and those who serve in public life. If we fail to do this, and I appreciate it's a huge task, I fear that more elected representatives will come to harm in the course of doing their jobs. But more than that, perhaps, I fear that the very essence, the value of democracy will continue to decline in the long term. And the press has a part to play here. Of course, those serving in public life should be held accountable, but let's make it about the arguments, not about tittle-tattle and gossip. My own fear, and I hope I am wrong, is that a Rubicon has been crossed. There is now a subculture where you can say what you want, threaten whoever you want if they stand for public office. They don't even need to be elected. Just putting yourself forward for election is apparently enough to merit the most intimidatory behaviour. A culture of abuse and intimidation of elected representatives has been carefully cultivated in some quarters and has gone unchecked and continues to be so. You can pass as many laws as you like, the culture has to change. Where we are today is the culmination of that cultivation, aided and assisted by the apparent courage anonymous postings on social media creates, whipped up by some sections of the tabloid press. This issue is bigger than any one individual. It's about the very survival of our democratic system.